April 1994. I was still working as a telemarketer, still seeing an older woman, and I read 6 books. In April 1994, we're going to jump right in with the first book, The Sharpshooter by Ed Gorman. And apparently, I didn't know this, I don't think my copy said this, but he was writing as Daniel Ransom. So it was originally released under that name. I don't know. When I looked it up on Amazon, that's what it said. But it's a Western. So you've got a guy named Jeremiah Belden who wants revenge against a woman named Evelyn, who he blames for the death of his son. And then we have, Mitch Caldwell. Yes, I believe that's what that says. Who was a sharpshooter, but, he's got demons. So he's become an alcoholic, but he's going to pull himself out of the bottle and try to save Evelyn from Jeremiah Belden. I have to keep checking my notes. It's Ed Gorman. It's a Western. It's good stuff. Ed Gorman was a great writer. Number 2, Double Whammy by Carl Hiaasen. I believe I've talked about this one before. And this has R.J. Decker, who was a news photographer turned private eye. And there's a largemouth bass tournament. And there's some shenanigans going on, and a dead body pops up, and all sorts of colorful characters. Classic, funny Carl Hiaasen. I really enjoyed his old stuff. Haven't read his stuff in a long time. Number 3. Man, we're just tearing through these. Number 3, Act of Love by Joe R. Lansdale. This is Lansdale's first full-length novel, and it is about a serial killer in Houston, Texas, called the Houston Hacker. I forgot an S when I wrote down Houston in my notes. It's the Houston Hacker, and I believe the perspective jumps between the killer and then the cops and the people trying to catch him. And it's it's Lansdale. I mean, it's good stuff, and it's really interesting to read his old work. And again, his first novel introduces a character that I think pops up in other stuff. But you can't go wrong with Joe R. Lansdale. Next up, we have Free Fall by Robert Crace. This is a Elvis Cole, Joe Pike book. I think it's the 4th in the series. And so Elvis Cole's private investigator. This woman, Jennifer Sheridan, let me check my notes. Jennifer Sheridan comes in. Her husband is a cop in LA. She thinks he's in trouble, so she hires Elvis Cole. And he and Joe Pike, his partner, get involved in gangs and, South Central gangs and corrupt cops and all sorts of craziness. And it's another great private eye series. The Elvis Cole books are really, really good. Robert Crace. Really good author. Then, the only book that I currently have a copy of, even though it's technically not a copy of what I'm talking about, By Bizarre Hands by Joe R. Lansdale, his first short story collection. I have By Bizarre Hands Rides Again. I believe I had the original paperback when I read it back in 1994, but I upgraded for this limited edition copy. Updated, and excuse me, this is just a great short story collection. It's got some of what I think are considered some of his best short stories. Tight Little Stitches in a Dead Man's Back. The Night They Missed the Horror Show is a classic. On the Far Side of the Cadillac Desert with Dead Folks is another classic, but all of these are great stories. Wow, this is number 24 of 300. And I believe it's illustrated. Yep, got all sorts of good illustrations in this particular edition. But again, it's Joe Lansdale. His short stories are amazing, and which is why I upgraded. I can't remember if there's anything extra in here that's not in the original. But again, you can't go wrong with Joe Lansdale, and his short story collections are fantastic. And then finally, something a little different. This is Flywheel, Shyster, and Flywheel, edited by Michael Barson, is what it looks like. I have written down there. This is the scripts for the Marx Brothers Lost radio show. That's what it says on the cover. I'm not sure. I don't remember what Lost means, if they just wrote all the scripts and the show never got made, or if it got made but they don't have copies of it. I don't know, but it was a Marx Brothers radio show. They were these characters, Flywheel, Shyster, and Flywheel, I believe. And I'm a huge, huge fan of the Marx Brothers. Love the Marx Brothers movies and their humor, the wordplay, all of that. And, excuse me, if you've seen their movies and then you read this book, there are recycled jokes. I don't remember the timeline, so I don't know if they took jokes from the radio show scripts and ended up using them in the movies, or if they just took jokes from the movies and put them in the radio show. But very, very funny stuff. If you like that kind of humor, if you like the Marx Brothers, this is the kind of thing that is going to be very, very entertaining. And it's scripts, so it's a very quick read. And that's it. 6 books, April 1994. Excuse me. So, let's see. Question for this video. Are you a fan of radio shows? Let's throw that out there. Have you ever listened to a radio show? I am a big fan. Well-made radio show. I used to have cassette tapes, if anybody can remember what those are, of reproductions of The Shadow, Dick Tracy. I loved that they included the original ads, which was really wild to hear these old ads. And the Dick Tracy had, at the end of the episodes, they would have the Dick Tracy Junior Detective Club or whatever, and you could have sent away for a decoder ring, and they'd give you a code that you could decipher if you had the decoder ring. And then, like, when I was in Iceland, one of the military radio stations played old radio shows and new radio shows, but I got hooked on, like, Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar, which was a mystery show, and I feel like he was an insurance investigator, if I remember correctly. And I think they had, like, newly produced Doc Savage shows. This is way before podcasts. This is what people had before television. People would sit around the radio and listen to these things. I love them. Couple of the Shadow episodes that I had in one. So the Shadow, for anyone who doesn't know, vigilante, and they would use a filter. So when he was Lamont Cranston, he just sounded like whoever the actor was, and then they would use a filter when he was the Shadow. So he would be talking, and then he would sound like this. Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? Anyway, there's an episode where the filter broke. So he's talking as Lamont Cranston, and then he's talking as the Shadow, but he sounds exactly just like Lamont Cranston. I had at least one episode, maybe more, where Orson Welles played Lamont Cranston / the Shadow, which I thought was crazy. Yeah, really, really dig old radio shows. So what are your thoughts on it? Do you listen to any, if you've never listened to old radio shows, do you listen to any podcasts that are dramatizations? Generally, I don't, because there's plenty of other podcasts I listen to that are just, people breaking down stuff. But I did recently listen to one that was the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl radio show. Squirrel Girl being a Marvel Comics character. And that was produced like a radio show, except it was literally a radio show that Squirrel Girl was doing on college campus radio, but all these voice actors, sound effects, a storyline through the whole season, which I don't remember, 6 episodes or something, where it was supposed to be Squirrel Girl had this college radio show, call-in show, and in the first episode, a villain calls in and says, I'm going to commit this crime, and they spend the rest of the season taking calls from people, and they're celebrity callers and things, and then people, Iron Man is in it, and MODOK, and Magneto, but throughout the whole season, they're trying to catch this villain that had called in the first episode. So that was really enjoyable. 'Cause I'm a fan of Squirrel Girl, and it was a very funny, entertaining show. So do you listen to anything like that, I guess, is what I'm getting at. If you don't, or even if you have listened to old radio shows, do you listen to any of the new stuff that's like that? Not, the typical podcast, when what I think of is, typical podcast. There are plenty of these dramatizations out there. Do you ever listen to those? And what are your thoughts on that? Man, I think just talking about the question for this video took up more time than going over the list of books. But either way, let me know what you think of radio shows down in the comments below. And if you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put them in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. If you'd care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronan5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals, is Eric Smith 5757. That's Eric with a K. ERIKSMITH 5757. That is all I have for you this week. So until next week, read more books.